And welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and the author of the best-selling book, The Codist, a biblical thriller of biblical proportion about the weaponization of DNA. The second edition is now out. We sold completely out of the first edition. You can now get the Kindle version for $2.99. And I want to introduce you to my latest book, The 7 Laws of Abundant Living, Lessons Learned from the Tree of Life. We take you on a journey from the natural to the supernatural, from the very ground and the RNA and DNA, which is derived from the dirt itself, that 97% of us all share. The same building blocks of life that the animals and the trees and all living things share. And there are lessons that God is trying to show us from things of the natural to reveal supernatural truth. Go to our webpage, ignitinganation.com, click on the special offers, click on the book, we'll ask for your email address, we'll send you a copy of the first chapter. We won't send you spam, because spam is not kosher. Get your first copy today. Very glad to have a third-time guest on, Dr. Timothy Jennings, author of his newly released breakthrough book, The Aging Brain, Proven Steps to Prevent Dementia and Sharpening Your Mind. Dr. Jennings has been in private practice as a Christian psychiatrist and certified master psychopharmacologist since 1997. Board certified in psychiatry by the American Board of Psychiatry and Neurology. He is a specialist in transcranial magnetic stimulation, a drug-free treatment for depression. Dr. Jennings is a distinguished fellow of the American Psychiatric Association, fellow of the Southern Psychiatric Association, and past president of both the Tennessee and Southern Psychiatric Associations. He spent more than 2 decades researching the interface between biblical principles and modern brain science, and is a highly sought-after lecturer and international speaker, and the author of The God-Shaped Brain and The God-Shaped Heart. He's in private practice in Chattanooga, Tennessee. You can find out more at www.agingbrainbook.com and his ministry website, comeandreason.com. Dr. Timothy Jennings, welcome back to Revealing the Truth.
Thanks for having me.
It's always a delight to see you. I'm always fascinated by our discussion and where it goes. For our audience, give a little backgrounder on you, a little bit more on the personal side, that you are a very strong believer. You approach medicine and science from a faith-based perspective, a biblical worldview, and a biblical medical view as well. How did that evolve?
Well, my view is that God is the builder of space, time, energy, matter, life itself, and that only as we come to understand his designs and how he's constructed reality to work and move towards harmony with that, can we actually find healing on all levels, whether it's physical, psychological, relational. And so as I look in research, I'm always looking for the integration between the biblical principles and designs and also the science. And that's what I found. And my patients have benefited, and I've seen tens of thousands of lives improved as you bring God's designs back into your life.
When you and I talked about the God-shaped brain and the God-shaped heart, we were very focused on the creation aspect of how God designed us and how we are in this image of God put together in such a fashion that we have literally receptors, that we even talked about the fascinating principle that there is no Hebrew word in the Old Testament for brain, because so a man thinks in his heart. He does. Every imagination of the heart, if we read in Genesis 6 about Noah's time, Jesus said, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So the brain had a completely different function than the heart, and the thinking center, according to the Bible, is really the heart. And there's a whole nother aspect, and in your book, The God-Shaped Brain, you absolutely explode this concept in a brilliant fashion. And we had if you want to see those videos, you can go to YouTube and look up Dr. Timothy Jennings and watch those stunning interviews about those books. This approach to the aging brain is really so timely, because we have this population of an aging generation. So the demographics that you're looking at are really different demographics than the demographic that you were targeting in the God-shaped brain and the God-shaped heart.
Yes, that's exactly right. You know, the data shows that last year in the United States, the Americans we spent over $300 billion in dementia care. And it's projected by 2040 as a nation, we'll spend $1 trillion a year on dementia care if we don't do something to reduce the number of people struggling with dementia. And what the science shows and what I've written in this book is that the choices we make in life now will determine whether we develop dementia later or not. Even if we have a family history of dementia, if you make the right healthy choices, you can avoid developing particularly the late onset Alzheimer's type dementia.
Is this a North America or Western exclusionary? I just got back from Israel, and you know, people are living into their 90s in Israel and don't seem to be at least, and I've been there 16 times and have not observed this kind of focus on the aging brain, if you will, because they don't seem to have the same level of problems, and their diet is all natural, all grown within the country. So there's no GMO, there's no antibiotics, there's nothing in their food system like we have, and even their immunizations are not the same as our immunizations here. So is this a chronic problem in the United States, or is this a global problem?
This is a global problem. All cultures in the world have problems with dementia as we age. It is really a problem of the last century and a half, though, because over the last century and a half, because of our ability to do good sanitation, antibiotics for infections, dental care, food inspections, we have reduced the numbers of early deaths and gastroenteritis and pneumonias and things like that. And so we have people living to a longer age. We have more dementias. It is true, however, the point you're getting at, the lifestyles of the cultures can impact the actual prevalence, though, in each culture. And the Middle Eastern culture seems to have a lower prevalence. It's still there, but it's not as high as it is in a Western culture where you have a lot more oxidating factors that accelerate the aging process. And the big three factors that we can either slow the process down with or accelerate it are physical exercise. If we're physically active, that helps. If we're sedentary, that accelerates aging. So societies where they do a lot of walking, that's beneficial. Diet, a Mediterranean diet or a whole food vegan diet are the healthiest diets, and they actually slow the aging process and reduce your risk of dementia. So in the Middle East, you get the Mediterranean diet. That's well documented. It's a low inflammation diet, and the third element, I think, is stress management and having good stress management. And I think spiritual people that have a healthy spirituality have been shown also to have better long-term outcomes.
You are a certified master psychopharmacologist.
Yes.
Meaning that you are extremely well versed in every one of the medications for depression, for anxiety, for the whole spectrum of mental health or mental illness. Is that correct?
Yes.
Have we flooded the market? Have we gone to the point we are now medicating with opioid derivatives like Ritalin or other medications?
Ritalin is not an opioid derivative.
That's not a cocaine or opioid derivative?
No. Or from like heroin, morphine, Demerol, painkiller meds. Ritalin and Adderall are stimulant medications. They would be more in the family of stimulating medicines, like cocaine would be in that family of medicines.
Okay, so like a methamphetamine.
Methamphetamine is a very toxic amphetamine, yes. But that's not an opiate.
Okay, so are we medicating earlier, introducing into the young people and creating an environment where this would have an impact at a later date?
So the question really, is do we tend to, as a society, shoot for medicines first rather than other interventions? That is not the same thing to say, are medicines, are there no place for medicines, or are there times when medicines are actually the best intervention? Yes, there are times when medicines are the best intervention. However, I think and there's a reason for this. It's not primarily driven, in my view, by the mindset of the physicians. It's driven by third-party payer systems, which have financially pressured physicians to prescribe medicines rather than take more time to find other holistic solutions for their patients. And so I think what you're picking up on is there may be a tendency in some practices to identify a problem and initially just go for a medicine rather than saying, hey, is there other contributing factors we can resolve or address that can bring wellness and restore balance without necessarily having to turn to a medicine? And that approach takes more time, more investment, more energy oftentimes, but you get, when you can find those other contributing factors, nutritional, diet, exercise, when you can bring those factors to bear, oftentimes the benefits are much better. With the stimulants you're bringing up, you're really alluding to things like attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And one of the problems in that disorder is there are many masqueraders to the disorder. There are things that have the symptom cluster of attention deficit disorder, but are not attention deficit disorder, and therefore can be misdiagnosed as attention deficit disorder and get treated with medicines when they really should be treated with some other intervention. And then what happens in the lay press is the individuals that have another disorder that looks like attention deficit disorder gets treated with meds, but then later they discover, well, if you'd only taken this particular food substance out or changed their diet, well, they don't need meds. And then the myth gets generated in society that we're over-prescribing and medicating ADHD when we can treat ADHD with non-medicine sources. Well, if you can actually treat an ADHD syndrome with something that's non-medicine, like removing a food source for somebody, say, has an allergy to that food, then that really wasn't ADHD to start with anyway.
You know, it's so interesting. So how does this and I was born in the early 50s, so medication wasn't something that was very common, and I grew up in the house call days. So you know, the doctor came to your house and gave you a shot, and whatever the shot was, it was for what you had. There weren't a lot of pharmacy, a lot of pills going back and forth. It was usually injectable treatments at that time that they used, that a doctor could travel around with his black bag and make a house call. And there were very common things back then of infections or
Sure.
various other things. But as we move from generation to generation, the food supply is different than it was when I was a kid.
That's a big factor. That's a big factor. In fact, I document in the book how prior to about a century ago, the average adult diet had about 1% linoleic acid in it, which is an oil that we get primarily from soy. And the American diet now is about 8% linoleic acid in it, which is a fatty acid from soy. And that increasing in fatty acid has byproducts. Linoleic acid has cannabinoid-like activity, stimulating the receptors that have to do with hunger and satiety. And there is data that suggests that that type of dietary change has increased obesity rates in this country. And adding omega-3 fatty acids from fish oil into the diet tends to reduce some of those consequences from the high soy in the diet. Now, the soy oil you're not just getting from eating like soy meats or soy byproducts. They use this oil in a lot of things that you in professional industrial food preparation. So you're getting it a lot, not even necessarily knowing you're getting it a lot. So that's one element that's happened to our diet. But yes, food. You mentioned GMO a moment ago, and you know, the GMO. I have grave concerns about GMO because what we know now is that when you eat food, you're not only absorbing the fats, the proteins, and the carbohydrates, but you're absorbing the genetic material, the DNA and the RNA in the foods. And the data shows that foods can and do the RNA, the genetic material in the foods, have been shown to epigenetically alter our DNA expression, meaning it can turn genes on or turn genes off within our body. And so there's been no research that I've seen at all on the epigenetic impact on genetically modified foods. Looking at genetically modified foods in animal studies and obesity show that genetically modified foods significantly increase obesity in the animal populations, regardless whether the animals get it directly, eat the corn themselves, or the animals eat other meat products from the animals that ate the corn. So there is this cascade. This is something that I think may be a factor why in Europe there may be less obesity than we have in America, because they don't allow genetically modified foods into their food stores over there. So I think this may be a factor that needs more research. There's evidence to suggest that, so I have grave concerns about that.
You know, when you're talking about RNA and DNA, and I have a section from a medical professional that contributed to my book about the RNA and DNA, the common foundational building blocks of life that we share with the tree. We share with anything that was made from the dust of the earth, carbon and all the other components, elements that we share across the spectrum with all living beings. It is forensically convincing that there is a design, and that you and I were designed a certain way, and in that way we were designed to respond, react to our bodies, to repel and to inflame or to surround invading, what would you call them?
Pathogens.
Pathogens, exactly, that enter our body. And our food source seems to be pathogenically rich.
Yes, some of them certainly are. I tell people, for instance, if you think about milk, why do we pasteurize milk? Pasteurization is the process of heating the milk up in order to kill bacteria that are pathogenic or disease-causing bacteria. Now, after you kill the disease-causing bacteria, where are they physically? They're still in the milk. So while you may not be able to get the disease from the milk, you're still drinking the milk that has these dead pathogens in them, and that will present their antigens to your immune system in your gut, and there is evidence to suggest that increases in inflammatory problems in our immune system reacts to that, increasing inflammation in our body. And so that's one example of maybe what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's really quite interesting. Now, I grew up in almost a mostly dairy-free home, Eastern European influence, drinking another mammal's milk was not something that you normally did. You might have cheese from that, or you might have really that would be the only byproduct that we would have had in our diet. I don't ever remember in 66 years ever drinking a glass of milk. I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't like it myself. Oof.
Yeah, and I find that people say to me, you know, what about chocolate milk? No, I don't remember having a glass of milk or seeing milk. I remember seeing cream in the refrigerator as a child, but that was for cooking purposes or for whipping or for whatever other thing. And so I haven't struggled with some of the things. My mother hasn't struggled at 92 with some of the things, and we believe it's the diet. My father died at age 84, but he had a diet rich in red meat, rich in alcohol, rich in tobacco, all the contributing factors, and I can look at my own family and say, why is one 92? Why did one die at 84? And why is she playing golf 3 times a week? And what does she do differently that is also my genetic contributor? How does genetics play into this? And can we reverse, as you said, just because you have a history of dementia in the family doesn't mean that you can't do something about that now to change the outcome of your life?
So the primary genes associated with the late onset Alzheimer's, there's a single gene called ApoE4, which it codes for a transporter that transports things like cholesterol and fatty vitamins like vitamin E in and out of the brain. And this particular gene, there's three variants in the human genome. If you have the E4 variant, and you have two copies of that, it increases your risk of developing late onset Alzheimer's disease by about 60%. However, the data shows one study at the University of Washington found that people with those genes, that E4 version, did not develop to dementia, and their brains had less of the toxic protein buildup in it if they had a history of exercise. So one modifiable factor there in that particular study was exercise. And exercise does a whole host of things. It keeps our insulin receptor sensitive. It activates neurotrophins that cause the brain to make new neurons and make new neuron-to-neuron connections. It reduces inflammation. And so it's not just the genes that we have. It really is the genes interacting with the world around us. And in the book, I document a whole long list of modifiable factors, like the exercise is one, sleep is one, food choices is one, mental activity is another one, spiritual activity. And all of these things are impacting on our body, either increasing or decreasing inflammation. And it's the inflammatory cascades that really seem to kick over a cascade of events in our brain that, if we have this chronically going on, will ultimately lead to dementia as we age.
You know, it's exciting to hear that all these things at any age are really, the earlier, of course, you start any kind of therapeutic approach to life, the better off you are. Is there an age, is there a certain point that prior to being symptomatic, is there a point of no return?
So, yeah, that's a great question. Of course, the earlier one starts these healthy interventions, the better, obviously. But the studies show that even people with mild cognitive impairments, they start to have little memory changes. They're not quite as sharp as they used to be, but they haven't moved into full dementia. If they make these lifestyle changes, they don't progress to dementia. However, the mild cognitive changes are indicators of people who are about to progress in dementia if they continue their same lifestyle. So yes, even with those changes, if you make the interventions to move to this healthy lifestyle, for most people, they will avoid ever getting dementia. So it's never too late, really. Now, is there a point? If you already have dementia, billions of neurons are already gone, and these changes don't cause the brain to rebuild all those billions of neurons. So you may slow the progression and not progress as fast when you're fully demented if you do these things, but you're not going to reverse the dementia at that point.
We're talking with, thank you for that answer. We're talking with Dr. Timothy R. Jennings, author of the newly released book, The Aging Brain, Proven Steps to Prevent Dementia and Sharpen Your Mind. We're going to take a short break, but when we come back, we're going to try to get some clarity as to what Alzheimer's means, dementia means, definitions of Alzheimer's, dementia, and talk about the discussion of what very specific steps we can take. And then the other side of the coin is, as we have aging parents, what to do and how to care for someone who is struggling in this area. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back. The daily TV program Revealing the Truth, seen live every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Standard Time at www.ianbn.com, and then replayed throughout the day and night via our website. All of our segments can be seen on the Igniting a Nation YouTube channel. Since our launch in January of this year, we've expanded our global reach to over 54 countries with a social media following of over 125,000. Our commitment is to bring you the most in-depth interviews with authors, subject matter experts, and thought leaders from around the world. We have interviewed guests from Israel, Brazil, England, India, and all across North America. All of our authors are featured on the Books and Media page on our website, www.ianbn.com. There you can find a direct link to the book you want to order, and we receive a small commission directly from Amazon. There is no cost to you for this service. In addition to our daily teachings and interviews, we make available to you the archive of all of the interviews on our YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram channels. Our live program is available from our homepage, and there is never a charge to you for any of this access. We made the decision long ago that we would remain a commercial-free resource that would not be influenced by any pressure from any outside company. There are only two ways that we are able to continue to operate this ministry and provide you with the only live 4-hour daily Christian television talk show program. The first is through your support and tax-deductible contributions to Igniting a Nation. These can be made directly through the donate button on the website or sent through the mail to Igniting a Nation, 2700 Corporate Drive, Suite 120, Birmingham, Alabama, 35242. The other way we support the program is by offering you a unique opportunity to have access to over 10 years worth of teachings on a subscription basis. The teaching archives contains all of my prior sermons, Torah studies, prophecy in the news videos, and much more for the low subscription price of $5 per month. This subscription grants you unlimited access to over 800 hours of content not available elsewhere and is updated weekly with the most current prophecy classes. In addition to 20 hours of original TV programming each weekday, we invite you to join us live every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday evenings for our Prophecy in the News classes. The times and locations are listed on our events page on the website www.ianbn.com. Every day, you and I are faced with the challenge of where we will go to hear the truth. We are committed to bring you the only program of its kind that covers the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. We cannot do this without your support. Since we launched on January 5th, 2017, we have aired over 300 individual teachings, interviews, and commentaries not available anywhere else. We are now working side by side with almost every major Christian publishing house to bring you the most in-depth feature interviews possible. Our 1-hour features address every subject that affects the believer's life. We are hearing of salvations from the Middle East, Africa, and all across the United States. Lives are being changed every day, and we have only just begun. Our mission is to become your trusted resource and grant you access to the people, tools, and information you need to grow in your relationship with the Lord. You can help us by liking us on social media and through your financial support. We know you have many choices in who you support, but we are prayerfully asking you to consider helping us keep revealing the truth, true to our calling, to cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth like no other program available. Donate today and help us bring the message to the four corners of the earth. Visit www.ianbn.com and donate, buy a book, or subscribe to our teaching archives. Without you, we do not exist. Welcome back to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and we're talking with Dr. Timothy R. Jennings, author of The Aging Brain, Proven Steps to Prevent Dementia and Sharpen Your Mind. Dr. Jennings, welcome back to Revealing the Truth.
Glad to be here, and thanks for having me.
When we went to break, right before we went to break, I said we would define the terms for our audience so that they're clear on the differences between Alzheimer's, dementia, and then that Alzheimer's dementia. What are the differences? How are they defined, and what are the differences?
Dementia is a syndrome of loss of ability, and it requires memory impairment plus the loss of one other cognitive ability in 4 domains, either impairment in normal language function, that's one, alteration in ability to identify objects normally, alteration in physical normal previously achieved abilities like buttoning or tying shoes, those physical abilities, or alteration in cognitive ability like planning, organizing, balancing your checkbook. So memory loss with one of those other losses constitutes dementia. That's the functional loss. Anything that damages your brain now can cause dementia, can cause the functional loss. And so you can have a disease known as Alzheimer's disease, which results in damaging the brain, causing the Alzheimer's dementia. But you can have a different disease, Parkinson's disease, and that can cause Parkinson's dementia. Or you can have vascular disease, which is little tiny strokes happening throughout the brain, killing brain cells, and eventually develop vascular dementia. So dementia is the syndrome caused by the underlying disease that is damaging the brain.
Understood. You know, it's interesting that since I've gone on Medicare and reached the age of Medicare a year and a half ago, I'm required to go once a year for just a basic exam, just a wellness, I guess, exam. And as he did in the prior year, he said, I'm going to name 3 objects, and then later on, sometime during the exam, I'm going to ask you what they were.
Yep.
And my answer to him was, is book, ball, and house the same ones you asked me last year? And he just looked at me and started to laugh, and he said, well, there's no problem with your with your memory. He said, you're exactly right. That's the one I've always used. Maybe it's time for me to change them. So I had remembered from a year and a half ago that it was the exact same 3 objects that he had told me then. So hopefully I'm doing something right in my aging process that's keeping the mind sharp. Is there some truth to my 92-year-old mother's approach that says stay active, stay engaged, find purpose even in your 90s, that's going to keep the brain alive? Be a reader, and have experiential and relational activities that are going to keep you engaged, involved, and out.
Absolutely. The data is overwhelming. The physical exercise, we kind of touched on a little bit briefly. So, yes, staying physically involved, but socially connected and being involved with people. Social isolation increases inflammation. Social connectivity, where we're involved with people, actually is very healing to us. And then having a purpose. One of the, I think, bad things that has happened in American society is there's an idea that's gotten in the psyche of Americana, and that is at 65 we quit. At 65 we retire. At 65 we shut down. And so one of the things that can accelerate cognitive decline is at 65 retire from your job, kicking back, putting the TV on, putting your feet up, and start munching. Okay, that's going to just accelerate it. There's one of the design laws called the Law of Exertion. The Law of Exertion is if you want something to be stronger, you must exercise it. Because if you don't use it, you lose it. Everybody knows this. And so if you want strong math abilities, you got to work problems. Strong musical skills, you got to practice your instrument. Strong cognitive abilities, you've got to stay engaged. And so if you retire and then become neurologically and mentally kind of vegetative, and you just become a listener rather than a thinker, just passively listen to other people but never really engage and do things yourself, that's going to accelerate your decline. So your mother's absolutely right.
Well, and I appreciate that, and I've watched it, and she's as funny as she ever was. And my father fulfilled exactly what you talked about. At 64, at his retirement party, because he was so afraid of the future that he had no vision, he had a heart attack at his retirement party because it was virtually for him, it was the end of his life. Life as he knew it was over. And he so fully embraced that he brought on this, his lifestyle, of course, contributed to it. I don't know that you can actually induce a heart attack.
No, the data is very clear. Psychological stress can induce a heart attack. It can cause a vasospasm of the coronary arteries and can cause a ischemic event. There's no question.
Okay, then that could very well be it. He wound up ultimately having bypass surgery, but I knew that he had there was no tomorrow. Tomorrow was over. He had nothing to get up in the morning to look forward to because he had not mentally and emotionally prepared for this next season. And for some, they look at it as being put out to pasture. Now I can enjoy, but they have no plan. Is that as detrimental to our mental health and to a contributing factor by not having a vision for the
Yes,
future.
no, you're exactly right. Now, it doesn't have to be gainfully employed where you're getting a paycheck, but you got to stay engaged in, and what you said, a purpose. The data shows that adults who volunteer, this is an act of altruism, giving of yourself to help others, and it could be with your church, it could be with your local, social networks in your community, volunteering somewhere at the hospital. Adults who volunteer have lower physical health problems, lower mental health problems, less disability, less depression, less dementia, and stay out of nursing homes longer than adults who do not volunteer. And so it's very healthy to stay engaged, to have a purpose, to have a vision, to give of yourself to help other people. It's neurobiologic. I give you epidemiologic data. There's a reason for that. When we help others, we activate the brain's love circuits, which calm our fear circuits, which reduce inflammation in our body. And if you do this repetitively, you have less inflammatory stress that reduces the things like diabetes, obesity, heart disease, and dementia and depression. So it's a real direct link to our mental processes and our physical well-being.
I recently moved to a tennis community for the exact reason that I want to continue to host my show, 3 hours of live TV, 5 days a week, and speak 4 nights a week. I want to keep that robust schedule for as long as I can, and I was living more of a sedentary because I was so work engaged that I made a conscious decision to move to a tennis-centric community where I could go take lessons, I could go join my hours don't let me play on a competitive team, but I can find a group of people that I can play with on a regular basis to get that exercise that I was not getting, and I was consciously aware that I was moving more into a sitting. I have on my phone a health meter that tells me that I need to be standing 12 hours a day. And if I'm standing 12 hours a day, I'm doing something positive for my body, that I need to set a caloric burn every day.
Not just the caloric burn. The data shows, I don't know if we have time to get into the technical detail, but when cells reproduce, they have to copy their genetic information, their chromosomes, so each cell has a copy, and the little caps at the end of the chromosomes are called telomeres. And as we age, those get shorter. The shorter they get, then the less capable the cell is of dividing, thus it accelerates aging, so you want those to stay at a certain length. Standing regularly helps lengthen our telomeres or keep them healthy, so we actually have vitality, and we live longer than people who don't stand regularly. So there's data that supports that. There's other interventions, dietary interventions, and other things as well. But you're standing, excellent, good stuff.
Thank you. Well, it's built into my iPhone and connected to my Apple Watch, so it tells me it's time to stand up. I get an alert. It's time to stand up. You've been sitting too long. These are little things that anybody can do that will make it so that your lifestyle is going to be a quality. It's incredible that people define dignity in old age as being able to take care of themselves, but they don't take the necessary steps in advance so that they can live a life with dignity. And this is exactly what your book is about. It's a roadmap. And I shared with you that although I didn't receive it until late yesterday afternoon, once I was able to plot out your navigation and the roadmap that you were giving and what the road signs were, it became a very easy trip to take down the road with you to see what the contributing factors are and what the antidote is for these contributing factors. And there was nothing I read in the book that said irreversible. That was not a common theme of your book. The theme of your book is reversible, 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 reversible. These conditions are reversible. It's not too late up to a point. So I want this to be a word of incredible encouragement. Now, there is a dispute on the use of alcohol. There's both a theological dispute and there is a scientific dispute on coffee, alcohol. There are camps divided in these areas. What is your position on these two particular areas?
Yes, and so not only my position, but for those who want, I've documented the research in the book with lots of references, so you can actually check the data yourself. But the alcohol question, what I do is try to help people clarify and get the confusion gone by identifying those elements where there is no dispute. Okay, there's no dispute that any alcohol of any kind while a woman is pregnant is unhealthy for the developing fetus. That's not disputed.
Right.
It's not disputed that a child with a developing brain and a non-adult that drinks alcohol, that impairs brain development. That's not disputed. It's also not disputed that people that already have dementia, drinking alcohol causes further impairments. That's not disputed. So I help people understand the things where you can be black and white. Okay.
Right.
It's also not disputed that distilled spirits have shown no benefit in any studies. So there's no studies that say a shot of vodka or bourbon or whiskey is healthy. None at all. Where the dispute comes in is in wines, primarily wines and some beers. Drinking some wine and beer, there's been various studies that show benefit. And then the question arises, is it because of the ethanol itself in these products, or is it because these products have other elements along with the ethanol? And the other elements would be polyphenols and other antioxidant molecules that are coming from the grapes or the other plant products that the alcohol or beer were made from. And the data shows that, in fact, the benefit is coming from the polyphenols and the other products, not from the ethanol itself, as evidenced by if you drink less than basically 2 drinks of wine a day for a man and 1 for a woman, then you see the benefit. If you go beyond that and increase the amount, then you lose the benefit because the ethanol dose becomes higher than the benefits of the polyphenols. But you also can get the same benefit without any negativities if you, for instance, drink grape juice without alcohol rather than the alcohol. So what I recommend in the book is if you do like a glass of wine, if you drink limited amounts, then because your liver has enzymes that metabolize the alcohol, it will metabolize the ethanol before it can actually do much damage if you drink in reasonable quantities. But if you're drinking enough to actually impair your brain, which means the alcohol is making it past your liver and you're getting intoxicated, then that's usually the amount that's causing some type of oxidative stress on your body and will accelerate health problems as you age. Now, with the coffee, the data shows, and it's very strong and robust data, that caffeinated coffee reduces essentially all causes of death, all-cause mortality, and reduces your risk of Parkinson's disease and Alzheimer's disease in a moderate amount of coffee drinking for those that don't have reasons not to drink. And coffee should be, decaf coffee didn't show benefit. Other caffeinated drinks other than green tea did not show benefit. In fact, showed harm. So only the caffeinated coffee, and as you read the book, you'll get into the details that it's the antioxidant molecules in the coffee interacting with the caffeine that is causing the combined benefit. And so, but if caffeine and the coffee needs to be looked at as medicinal, because if you have certain health problems, it could worsen. Number one, sleep is a requirement. If you're one of those people very sensitive to the caffeine, and even 1 cup of coffee early in the morning, you have trouble sleeping at night, then you can't. It's better to get your sleep than to drink a cup of coffee a day. But if you can drink and sleep 7 to 8 hours a night without problem, then okay, maybe coffee can work for you. If you have certain vascular diseases like Raynaud's disease or macular degeneration, the caffeine is a vasoconstrictor. You don't want to use it. It can worsen those diseases. If you have seizure disorder that's not well regulated, caffeine makes it easier to have seizures, and so you wouldn't want to use it. So there are some people that can definitely benefit from drinking caffeine, but you have to be careful when and who uses it.
In all these cases, you've referred to particular chemical compositions and defined various combination of elements on a chart. Is there a way to get the same benefit from, let's say, the tannins, if you will, in the wine and some of these caffeine-related antioxidants through supplements of some kind, vitamin and mineral supplements, or even within the food chain itself?
So for the wine question, the answer is absolutely yes. You can get it just from drinking grape juice. And the tannins are there, and you get all the benefits without any of the concerns of the alcohol at all. So with that question, it's absolutely yes. With the coffee question, caffeine from any other source other than green tea is shown to be harmful. There's no benefit to the caffeine at all. So you just taking caffeine supplement or drinking other drinks with caffeine, that's actually going to cause problems. In fact, and just to say it right out, all sodas accelerate your risk of dementia. All of them, whether they're caffeinated, decaffeinated, whether they're sugared or diet, they all increase your risk of dementia, and artificial sweeteners increase your risk of dementia. So you don't want to be doing those. So the question, is there any supplement you can take that can give you the benefit of the coffee? Well, not that I know of. Decaf coffee in the studies didn't show the benefit. In this particular case, for the coffee itself, that was an interaction between the natural occurring caffeination of the coffee and some of those tannins and things that you find in the coffee itself. So with the green tea does even more. It has it helps remove the amyloid proteins out of the brain. It helped all population groups: those without dementia, those with dementia, those with early cognitive changes. All groups showed improved cognition from drinking green tea, improved memory. It also showed delay having a protective benefit to the brain. And it enhanced, on functional scans, it enhanced the connective signaling between the front of your brain and the rest of the brain regions from the green tea. So green tea had lots of very positive benefits for people.
The green tea extract, which is sold in many stores, is that the same? Is that a packaged type of?
So I haven't seen any data research on green tea extract. This was actually on green tea, so I can't comment on whether it would or would not. The majority of the supplements and food benefits, we receive the best when we actually eat it from as close to the original food source as possible. Rather than from a pill. The data that vitamin C from a supplement can be beneficial, that's true. Vitamin E, though, from supplements can be harmful, where vitamin E from food sources like almonds and sunflower seeds are very, very beneficial and helpful. So even the omega-3 fatty acids from fish oil, the data showed that people had a much more robust benefit and neural protection and thickening of the cortices of the brain when they ate fish rather than taking a fish oil supplement. So there is some aspect to eating the foods themselves having a bigger benefit than simply trying to find those molecules and put them into a pill.
Let's talk we just have about 5 minutes left in the segment. Let's talk about organic versus non-organic from a food source perspective. Is that a significant improvement? Are all things organic better than all things which are processed?
So I have to define what we mean by organic. So tell me what you mean. Organic can mean non-GMO, and I think we've talked about that already, that I think there's grave concerns about GMO across all the foods that use GMO. So if we mean that, yeah, I think that the non-GMO is going to be better than the GMO. But organic can also mean, well, were pesticides used in the fields? Well, I don't know of any data of a negative consequence on foods that don't contain pesticides when you eat them. If the pesticides are still on them when you eat them, then you've got a concern. But if the pesticides have been removed and they're not on the actual portions that you're eating, I don't know of any data that would be a problem for the actual consumption itself. You want to argue environmentally and other cascades in the community, that's a different discussion.
This has been always a struggle for me, because when the term organic came out, I said a carrot grows in the dirt, that's organic. You know,
right.
You're not making it out of a laboratory. So
some people mean that we have to have, horse manure as our fertilizer, an actual, animal manure source rather than an artificial fertilizer. So there's lots of different levels of what the organic means, I think the GMO has got real concerns with it. Obviously, eating pesticides has got a concern with it. So other elements of organic, we'd have to define and then look at the data.
So is there a way to give our audience just a snippet? You want, if you're eating meats, you want meats not given antibiotics.
And that's a different question. When you were saying organic, I was thinking primarily of produce, not meat sources. I'm mostly a vegetarian. I do eat some salmon, and I like the wild salmon, not the farm-raised salmon, for the ideas you're elucidating right here. I think industrial meat production corrupts the quality of the meat. For a variety of reasons. They feed them feeds that often may have genetically modified foods in the feeds, the genetically modified corns, and the data shows that if you eat meat from an animal who ate genetically modified food that in the animal studies, those problems passed on, and the subsequent animal got obesity as well. The antibiotics, the injections, there's a lot of research that industrial meats are not necessarily healthy and can increase real health problems for us. So if people do eat meat, then range-fed animals. If you're a hunter, go out and get your own deer and have it butchered. I think that's going to be a lot healthier than getting something out of your supermarket aisle. And then the way we cook it, searing it, cooking it at high temperatures where you sear it or fry it, makes byproducts in the cooking called advanced glycation end products that are highly inflammatory and increase our risk of dementia as we age. And so cooking it in more of a crock pot, slow cooking, baking, rather than searing and scarring the meat and burning it like that.
Interesting. Well, you have a blog up on your website. Today's blog was 7 steps to keep your brain healthy and mind sharp. They can find that at your agingbrainbook.com website and get that daily or weekly blog. I don't know how often you do it, but it really summarized 7 steps you could take, very short descriptions of each one of those steps, and that one was posted just this morning, so I was able to look at it. We've been talking with Dr. Timothy Jennings, author of The Aging Brain, Proven Steps to Prevent Dementia and Sharpen Your Mind. I would recommend this to anyone of any age, both those that are young and those that are old. Those that have maybe a parent that you're concerned about them, and you might be the one doing their grocery shopping, and you might be the one who can impact their aging process. This is kind of a clarion call for us to take control over God's design for our bodies and try to line up more with the food sources that He gave us, what He called clean, what He called unclean, what He called good for us. And Paul says that, yes, my friends, all things are lawful. You can eat whatever you want, but not all things are beneficial. And I believe that Dr. Jennings' book makes that eminently clear. You can live a life on the couch, you can live a life on a treadmill, you can live a life of gluttony, or you can live a life of health. You have choices to make, but maybe you don't know what the choices look like or how to get where you want to go. This is the book for you. I've seen a lot of them. I have a bunch of them on my shelf. I've interviewed a lot of them, but I will tell you that this one resonated with me because although it was scientific, it was practical. Although it was high level, it was something that I could write down notes and apply to today and make a daily decision even after my quick reading of this book in just the past 24 hours. So Dr. Jennings, thank you. Thank you again for a stunning, scholarly, but practical work and the contribution you make to so many people.
Thank you so much for having me.
God bless you, my friend. And we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll bring you the next edition of Revealing the Truth.